Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
The #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with contentatscale.ai.
Hi everyone, thanks for all being here. We're nearly at the end of Brighton, so well done. So to introduce myself, I mean, Claire has already kind of said it, but I'm Noémie, I'm Head of Operations at Viaduct Generation. We're a mission-first organic agency helping increase the revenue of e-commerce brands. And yes, I did just have to say that last part, the two co-founders are sitting at the front. So some of you may be wondering, what on earth is a head of operations doing speaking about marketing on a budget? Well, I've only really recently transitioned into this position. I've literally been doing this for 2 weeks. And before that, I was head of marketing for VG for the last 2 years. So today I'll be kind of going through what I've learned in that time. A little bit of context, VG was set up in July 2020 and we were, kind of still are, a bootstrapped agency, which essentially means we had no money, no budget. Not only, and I'm not just talking in financial terms, I'm also actually talking about time. I joined VG on a part-time basis as well. So it was really important to try and develop a marketing strategy that was going to work to cater to those needs. So the types of things that I'm going to be talking to you about, I've got 5 top tips to share with you today. I think this is relevant regardless of where you're at with your marketing strategy, if you're right at the beginning and you're like a solo team, or even if you've already got a more established one and you're reflecting on whether it's working or not. So let's get into it. My first top tip for you today is prioritize. This seems like a really obvious one, but I think sometimes this can be forgotten and it can be sometimes quite hard to get to the point of understanding what a priority is. So in order to be able to do this, I asked myself a few questions. The first, why do you prioritize? You want to understand what you want and what you're trying to achieve with your marketing strategy in the first place. So first question, what are we trying to achieve? Now, this is a really important question. Here at this stage, it's really important to understand your overall business goals. You want to make sure that your marketing strategy is as aligned as possible with where the business is at. This is likely to change over time, which is why it's always really important to revisit these things. When I first joined VG, what we were trying to achieve was literally just putting our brand name out there. The SEO industry is a crowded one. And so it was really important that we could build up our brand reputation and try and stand out from the crowd a little bit. Second question, who are we trying to reach? So VG, as mentioned, is mission-led. We started in July 2020 because our CEO, Fabio, did a report to look into underrepresented founders in the SERPs. He surveyed a total of 1,000 businesses. He looked at the top 10 industries in the UK and the 100 top ranking companies in those industries. Out of those 1,000 industries, there were only 1,000 companies, there were only 2 Black-owned businesses, which showed that there was a huge community that was being massively underserved by the industry. We knew this was a huge talking point, and this is what we really focused on at the beginning. So in answering this question, we were really trying to reach out to those specific communities. Next question is, what are we trying to say in the first place? At the initial stages, what we were really trying to do was to establish our credibility and also educate the community. Part of the reason why it was such an underserved community is because they didn't really understand or know enough about SEO. So what we were trying to say at that point was really to communicate and emphasize the importance of SEO and the benefits of investing long term. Next, we had to consider what were we actually trying to get people to do. Marketing obviously is hugely expansive. There are many channels, there are many different tactics that you can employ. But actually at that initial stage, it was really important to consider what we were trying to get people to do because we were such a small team. We didn't want to send everyone to the sales team who had a mild interest in SEO. That was never going to work out. So maybe we were going to try and get them to download a guide or sign up to our newsletter or watch a video. So you want to take this into consideration. Next, an all-important question when you're building a marketing strategy on a budget is how much does it cost? Once again, I'm not just talking in financial terms at this point, I'm also talking about time. Because I started on a part-time basis and I was pretty much a one-person marketing team, if something that we could do was free to do but then would take me 30 hours, then maybe it wasn't valuable at that specific time and it was something to consider, maybe looking at a later date. Then maybe a really obvious question, but the last one is what are others doing? This for me was particularly important because actually at the point that I joined VG was when I first entered the SEO industry as well. So it was important for me to understand how other agencies were marketing themselves and talking and reaching out to their different audiences. There's obviously also the thing where, you're looking out for opportunity gaps, like what are people not doing that we can then take advantage of. So now you've got a wealth of information, you've got, all of these ideas and answers to questions in your head. What do? You make a matrix. So this can look like anything. Here is a bit of a template of how I did it. I'm quite a visual person. Feel free if you want to take a picture, please do. But essentially, when you visualize things like this and you write everything down, it makes it really clear straight away what you do need to prioritize, what can you do right now, what maybe is better to do at a later date. And also in terms of actually communicating with leadership and the rest of the management team, this makes it really easy to kind of convince them of your ideas. So once we've got that, I say start with what you know. Marketing is hugely expansive, as I've mentioned before, and it can get overwhelming pretty quickly. And so starting with what you know does a few things. So firstly, it allows you to hit the ground running. It kind of stops you getting that kind of information kind of paralysis and kind of freezing because there's so much to do. And once you get going, it allows you to build confidence kind of in what you're doing as well. It also allows to build the confidence of your team of your marketing strategy and prove that your marketing strategy is actually successful and doing what you promised kind of that it would do. It also gives you a bit more time to kind of plan and prepare for those trickier elements or those areas of marketing that you might not be so comfortable with. Next, you want to focus on the channels that you own. You want to do this for a number of reasons. And first of all, they tend to be cheaper because you own them. And also, you own the data in that situation and there isn't so much third-party involvement. So the first channel I'm going to talk about is your website. We're an SEO conference, so I don't think I need to convince you of the value of a website, but I'm going to kind of give a few pointers as to why it is very important to consider. Your website is essentially your shop window. It is your digital shop a lot of the time as well. Regardless of how you come across your potential clients or customers, they are always ultimately, if they have that intent to purchase, they are going to check out your website. They want to understand who you are. They want to know that you're legitimate. I'm not going to lie, when you look at a terrible website, you're like, I'm not giving them my money. So you want to make sure, obviously, that your website is informative, that it's clear. You don't want people leaving with more questions than they came on with. Also, it's important to remember it doesn't have to be perfect from the go. It will evolve with you, just as the marketing strategy will too. Just get something out there and then, edit as you go. Next channel is email. Now, I really like email because it's a direct line to your potential client or customer. It allows you to, essentially directly communicate about lots of different things, and it doesn't just have to be product or service-led. You can give updates about how your agency is doing. You can, introduce new team members. You can talk about different, recognitions or awards that you've been nominated for. Also, it's the type of, it's the classic thing that maybe someone has come across your content or your brand at some point, but maybe didn't have any intention in kind of, well, in our case, it's purchasing kind of like an SEO product or service. But maybe in 6 months' time, that might change. And if, you're regularly in their inbox on, a monthly or bi-monthly basis, then it allows you to be top of mind. Next is your blog. I literally feel like this every time I upload one. Perhaps slightly controversially, I don't think that you should prioritize your blog just because it helps from like a ranking perspective. For us, it was really important at VG to kind of communicate the authority of the team in terms of, about different subjects and the topics that we were covering through our services. I don't know if you guys know the VG team very well, but we're quite a young bunch. And so we needed to make sure that we were leveling up to our peers and that we were showing that we did have the knowledge. As well with the blog, again, you can share your achievements through there, you can share your team, so it's not just kind of service or product related. Next, podcast. Who doesn't have a podcast these days? But honestly, this is a great channel and something that I personally got a lot of enjoyment out of. I am going to do a cheeky plug, The Wise Build Bridges. Go check it out, hosted by yours truly. But yeah, no, podcasts are a great channel because they allow you to reach a completely new audience through a completely different kind of platform as well. We kind of very intentionally sought out guests that had already like a really strong audience and network as well, so that we could tap into those networks. What we did also do was platform the team on our podcast as well. Once again, really trying to build that relationship with and show off like how great our team is, because people are always more likely to want to work with you when they know who they're working with. What's also worth mentioning is that podcasts make great hero content pieces as well, where you can create lots of even more content from it, which actually leads me to my next tip, which is to reuse existing content. This is really important to do, especially if you are low on resources, whether that be like people or budget, because creating content is really tiring. It takes a lot of energy. Idea generation doesn't happen all the time. So I would definitely recommend trying to concentrate this at a specific time and, being really intentional with the type of content that you create. When you are creating these hero pieces, you want to try and make them evergreen so that you can kind of reuse them at a later date and they can stay relevant to what people are saying as well. And they can also, hero pieces can cater to like those different kind of goals as well that you set out at the beginning in your priorities. Having said that, it's really important to make sure that you're thoroughly making use of all of the distribution channels. So the ones that I've just mentioned in terms of like your website, email, podcast, but also things like your socials as well. This is really important, and it's actually in terms of like recycling or reusing content. I think you really, when thinking about channel distribution, you want to make sure you're tailoring your content to the channel that you're doing. So an example is on our LinkedIn, we noticed our audience was a lot more like SEO savvy, was interested in kind of our services and the more business side of things. Whereas, for example, our Instagram audience was a lot more engaged with our mission and the community that we were trying to build. And so actually we could, from a podcast, we'd be able to find a clip that was directly relevant to, speaking on an SEO topic within itself, but then also we could, because we'd also platformed underrepresented voices within the industry as well, we could easily use that as well for our more community-led pieces. Then my last one, maybe slightly ironic given that we are an SEO conference, but is not to just rely on digital. Although ironically, I'm now going to talk about a digital thing. But Events. In this case here, I want to talk about creating your own events. I'm a big fan of events because that was actually my specialism ahead of joining VG. I think they're great. But actually, virtual events, they're so cheap to do. You've got Google Meets, you can create a virtual event. And they're actually really great indicators in terms of understanding why people are signing up in the first place. You can set up certain signals within your event to understand essentially kind of like the warmth of a lead. So, if you've got polls, if you look at the chat, if you look at the Q&A, if someone is asking, what is SEO, you should not be passing that lead to your sales team. However, if someone is then asking about budgeting or pricing, then you know that there's a lot more intent there behind what they're trying to do. So yeah, I would definitely recommend looking into that. Obviously, then you get to build up your email list from there as well. An example of a virtual event that we did earlier in the year that was quite successful was we did kind of like an intro to the VG team, and essentially the idea was that we wanted to kind of give the kind of show people what it would be like to be a client of VG. And so we introduced them to every person that they would be in contact with throughout the different process, from the sales to kind of once they were onboarded as a client. This kind of allowed people to almost essentially like imagine themselves as a client of VG, which is always a very positive thing. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, exploring that side of things. We got some great feedback from that as well. And then I can't speak about events and not talk about kind of in-person one. I'm sure everyone's had an awkward networking moment. But yeah, in-person events are really valuable because you get to build one-on-one relationships, and you are always so much more memorable in person than you are going to be online. For me, for example, when I actually first joined VG, my first week there was a Brighton SEO, which was really ideal. It got me to immerse into the industry, which at the time was really new to me as well. You get to kind of identify the key players really quickly. And also you get to build relationships that you can then leverage again in the future. I think sometimes we can forget how generous people can be as well, especially if we are just used to seeing people online. Actually, in person, a lot of the time, if you ask them like, hey, how did you do this? People are willing to kind of give information. So definitely make the most of that. And yeah, again, it's that idea that maybe you'll just have this offhand conversation. It might not even be about what your business does. It'll just be your everyday conversation. And maybe then, in the future, that person has an interest in kind of purchasing what your business provides. And then maybe they'll remember you and they'll reach out to you and say, hey, I'm actually looking, to improve my SEO. And then you'd be like, brilliant, I can do that. So let's summarize. Number one, prioritize. This is definitely the most important tip when you're building out your strategy. You want things to be feasible. You also want your team to believe in what your strategy is laying out. And you can only really do that if you understand what you're actually able to do at that given time. Start with what you know, just get going, build your confidence up, build your team's confidence in your strategy as well. Focus on the channels that you own, because no one can take away your data. Well, I guess they did at one point with GDPR, but that's done now. So, but yeah, and then reuse your existing content. This is going to save you a lot of headaches. Just make sure that you plan, you've got your content calendars and all of that going. And then finally, just get out there. It's possible, like everything is editable as well a lot of the time. So don't panic and freeze, and you'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.